Hi everyone! Recently I did this Paw Patrol illustration and it's quite a huge project as it took me 20 hours to paint. Firstly, the format is quite big, it's 12 by 16 inches or A5 format for those of you who are in Europe. And even though each dog is quite small, they still have a lot of detail in them and probably like 100 layers of paint. So I decided to break it down for you into sections, and I will be posting videos every day, and each new day I will be painting another dog. We will start with Rubble today. I thought that this way you will be able to really see in detail how I paint them, what techniques I apply, and how I handle certain situations and problems along the way. So as you can see, I already started with applying Hansa yellow medium all over the paw of this dog. In the reference picture, their paws are really glowing with this neon light, and in watercolor it is impossible to achieve as we don't have any neon colors, but we can get this effect by introducing a really strong value of paint next to almost white of the paper. This contrast will help us create this glowing effect, and you will see me using this technique on pretty much all the dogs as they all have glowing paws. You also saw me applying the same yellow color to the helmet, and then I used neutral tint for the gray area in the helmet. And at this point, I'm just working in layers with the same colors, and my goal here is just to get the values right. So keep adding layers until you get the intensity that you're satisfied with. For the parts of his costume that are in shadow, I add a little bit of imperial purple to my yellow. Purple and yellow are complementary colors, so they create nice shadows. I have a cadmium-free orange in my palette, and it's an opaque color, so it's very easy for me to layer it in every stage. There is not much orange in his outfit. If I remember correctly, it's only on his badge. And here I'm mixing burnt sienna with a little bit of Hansa yellow medium, and I add quite a bit of water to get milk consistency. With illustrations like this, it's better to do multiple layers than going right away with a strong value, because you risk that your subject will be very flat and there will be no way of fixing that. With this color, I go all around his eyes, and then I wash and dry my brush on a paper towel and lift paint in the areas of highlights. Lifting is a very important technique in watercolor, and you should never compromise with an even wash to create highlights, meaning it's better to create a solid, even wash of color and then lift paint, rather than try to create a patchy wash with a highlight kind of built in. I hope it makes sense and you understand what I mean. Neutral tint here, and I work on his badge again. And there is no right or wrong way of moving around your painting. You just need to be constantly watching which areas are wet and need to dry, and which ones are already dried, so you can apply the next layer. And again, I was lifting color here to create dimension. Now I'm adding a bit more burnt sienna and hence a yellow medium paint here, and this time much less water, probably like cream consistency, and I start working on his ears. And once again I show you in detail how I apply an even wash of color and then lift the highlighted parts. And as this area is so small, the paint gets soaked in almost instantly, so I feel safe on layering right away. Just make sure you don't have a lot of water on your brush and you will be safe. Now I take cream consistency of neutral tint and apply it to the hammer of his badge, and I also use it to create folds in his costume. I dip in my yellow mixture with more imperial purple and go over the parts that are in shadow to build up the value. This illustration also has a lot of color reflections, which were tricky. If you don't feel confident enough with this step, you can definitely skip it. It won't make or break this illustration, it's just a nice and more elevated touch to it. So Rubble's left part of the body has a lot of blue reflections from Chase, who is next to him, so I took a little bit of cerulean blue and laid it down on those parts that have these reflections. And you see me creating this kind of variegated wash between yellow and blue, meaning I blend colors on the paper right in the middle where they meet. And by the way, the white parts of each dog are never pure white. I usually use a thick consistency of neutral tint to cover those areas. This way you will be able to create this 3D effect. Here I'm adding more burnt sienna and burnt umber, and I start building dimension in his face. I usually lay color around the eye and then blend it with a clean and almost dry brush. And again, to create a believable dimension, you need to be patient and work in transparent layers. So you see me going over and over each area multiple times. Each dog took me about 2 hours to paint. Some bigger ones took even more time, so it's definitely not something you can do in 15 minutes. With a thick consistency of neutral tint, I go over his muzzle, and you can safely cover everything that will be this color or then darker. You should only avoid areas of bright light, like his fangs in this case. And I also didn't color in his mouth, as I need the tongue to be bright reddish pink, and the underlayer of neutral tint wouldn't allow me to achieve that. And now I'm trying to create volume in his muzzle. To simplify this, try to look at your reference picture and establish where the dark parts are. put color there and carefully blend around. What is crucial here is the paper you're working on. For illustrations like this, you definitely need a high quality 100% cotton paper. Pulp paper would never be able to blend and lift colors like that. So if your illustration looks like a mess, it's probably not because of your skill level, but rather the paper's fault. Please, please, please only use 100% high quality cotton paper or you might get disappointed very quickly. I use Saunders Waterford paper for this illustration, and it's an amazing material that can take numerous layers, lifting, blending, etc. Now I went back in with my burnt sienna mixture and I'm building volume on the face again with the same technique of applying paint, then taking off the excess paint on the paper towel and then blending the color. And I do the same thing on the muzzle, and I show you in real time how I apply a little bit of color, then take off the paint from my brush and blend. Sometimes a light tap of your finger also works great to blend a stubborn area. I fill in the irises of his eyes with the same burnt sienna mix, and to make eyes interesting and not flat, I always lay down the lightest color first and then I go over the rim of the iris with a darker version of this color. In this case, I added burnt umber. And even though it's such a small area, you will still see a huge difference overall. And here I'm adding another layer around the eyes again. By now you should clearly see how many layers it really took me, and I'm not even sure that I included all the layers in this video. Some of the repetitive steps might have been cut out for the sake of not making this video 2 hours long. Now I start introducing darks, and by the way, you should never judge your painting or illustration before you put your darkest darks, because in the middle of the painting everything looks creepy and weird, and only after you lay down your darkest darks, like eyebrows, pupils of the eyes, inside of the mouth, etc., you won't be able to see if everything is coming together or not. So trust the process and finish the work, but don't put in your darks too early. They should go almost last, definitely towards the end. For his tongue, I took quinacridone rose and put it all over, and then I added alizarin crimson to the back of the tongue. At this stage, I'm just looking overall on the illustration and judging every individual part. I ask myself if the values are correct, and if not, I add color to the parts that lack value. At this point, I pretty much use the same mixtures and I don't introduce any new colors. I just adjust what I already have. His mouth part is probably the darkest dark, and I use almost butter consistency of neutral tint to cover that area, with the exception of the back of his tongue. I put a less strong mixture there to create a shadow effect. Now you see me taking off masking fluid, and honestly, after painting this illustration, I understood that putting in masking fluid was only important around the paws of the dogs to create this glowing effect, and also a little dot in the eye to preserve a highlight. And that's it, you don't need a masking fluid anywhere else. Here I'm correcting more, softening edges. I could have done this with lifting and it would have looked much more organic, so masking fluid did nothing for me here actually. And there you have it, Rubble is now complete. I hope you learned something, and definitely check out my channel for other parts of this illustration. See you there!